There we go. So I'll record. Okay, so you'll need to know or be able to write out the SQL code used to remove a privilege from a table. And we'll practice that on our chicken farm database. But just make note that you will need to be able to write the code to take a privilege away from a user identifier on a specific table. The privilege, the table name, and the identifier will be provided to you. You'll just have to put it in the correct SQL order with the correct SQL code. You'll also need to be able to create a view. So all of the create view statement, you will be given the name of the view. You'll be given what columns needed to be viewed. And you'll also be given a table name. And there won't be anything complex like needing to narrow it down with a where statement. So it'll just be a simple view. There won't even be the need to rename the columns. So a simple view that will select a couple of columns from a base table. And you'll need to write that SQL code out. You'll also, going along with the removing privileges, there'll be another where that you have to give privileges to a specific identifier to a specific table. So you'll be given the identifier, you'll be given a couple of privileges needed to be assigned to the table name. Those will be your essay style questions. Out of your homework, you'll need a list of the advantages of using a view. So that was already one of your homework questions. Out of chapter 5, the 3 different advantages for using views. You'll need to list the advantages of using roles. Those are found in the PowerPoint, and there'll be 4 of them. Are views described in the SQL standard? What do you think? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes. We had a chapter on them, so yes, they were definitely defined in the SQL standard. Can you define a data type when you're creating a view?
No.
No. If you drop a view, does it affect the base tables or data in any way?
No.
Correct. So answer is no. And here's a question about a SQL session. Is there ever a time when the SQL session has a null value for the user identifier? Or vice versa, does a SQL session ever associated with the role name that is null? So the answer to that,
Yes, when it's first started.
yeah, when it's when you're first starting, the role name is null. When you execute a SQL statement, then it will reverse. The role name will have an identifier as the statement's executing, and then the user identifier will become null. So it's always one time that's the way it's defined in the SQL standard anyway, that one value is always null out of the user identifier, role identifier pair. Okay, that is the review for the quiz. Some of the key concepts that I wanted to make sure you understood out of the chapter, especially with the concepts of views, that they don't impact the base tables. You can't define data types. So most of this stuff was covered almost exactly out of the self-test questions out of the back of the book. Let me share my screen again. There we go. Okay, so I don't know if anybody, I probably should have warned y'all on Wednesday that you might want to have taken your database home with you. Or at least got your code. You don't really need to have the the SQL database itself. You can always just download the PostgreSQL and run it at your home computer, so you wouldn't have to remote in on everything. So I've got my Visual Studio Code running here on my laptop with all the code that generated the chicken farm database. And we left Wednesday with adding constraints to the eggs table, but I didn't want you to recreate the entire database because we already had data in the eggs table. What I was wanting it to do is use an alter statement. See if you can alter the table and add the constraint. So I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes to think of and write out the alter table command that you could use to add these two constraints for the eggs table. If you think you got the answer, go ahead and paste it into chat. Anybody think they got it yet?
Yeah, hold on just a second.
What was it that you asked?
Is it this?
Yes, that would be it. So mine, I've on a laptop at home, my check constraint had different times for the daylight. So I'm going to do mine a little bit different. I'm going to drop my daylight constraint and then re-add it with the correct. So just adding in a constraint is pretty simple. Goes to there, alter table, table name followed by add constraint. But mine's a little bit more complex. I've already had a constraint for the daylight. I just had the times on the check different. So you likely aren't going to have this issue that I had, but I'm going to have to drop and then add. Don't think, yeah, comma. So I had to do a little bit different, but Wade put the alter table command in to add the constraints for the eggs. And then on my screen here, I highlighted if you already had a constraint created, but you needed to modify it. Then in my case, I dropped the constraint. Since the constraint doesn't actually contain any data onto the base table, I could drop it and then recreate it with the correct numbers. But your code would have looked like that, would have been your answer. Okay, so I don't know if y'all are remoted in or if you try to replicate this on your home computer. I know remote PC is kind of slow, and it looks like we might possibly be Zooming with what the weather and temperatures are looking like, possibly all of next week. We'll just have to watch what the weather's going to do. But I think I sent out that announcement that if we're closed again next week, we'll be Zooming just like we are today. That way we won't lose time. Okay, so on Wednesday, just to review what we did Wednesday, we created a user called Cletus and set his password to admin. We created a role called farmer and set it for no login. That way it was definitely a user or a role account. We granted the farmer role to Cletus. And then we did a grant select permission on eggs to the farmer role. So do y'all remember that from Wednesday?
Yes.
And we tried to do a few things with, we noticed on like right down here at the bottom, we've seen what user account that we were connected to the database on. So when we connected, we made a new connection and we named it farmer. We connected as Cletus with the admin as the password. So when we opened up a SQL on that, we look down here at our bottom part and seeing that our login changed to Cletus. We were able to select from eggs. And I don't have the data that we entered on Wednesday on my laptop, but you would have had, if you've remoted in, you should have a couple of rows in there where we added egg collections from, I think, the 9th, 10th, and the 11th or something like that. You also seen where if we try to select another table, that we get an error, permission denied. And if we try to insert, I remembered if we inserted today's date or not. It doesn't really matter at this point, but So if I try to insert something into eggs as Cletus, what's going to happen? We're going to get a permission denied. And why is that? Why can Cletus not insert data into eggs? Why can he not view the breeds table? Should be simple answer. Anybody?
I don't know.
All right, didn't grant him any rights to that.
Okay.
So only granted view on the eggs table. That's the query select. So I want you to give Cletus rights to add data. So give Cletus rights to add data to the eggs table, and also give him rights to view the breeds table. And this will be practice for your essay part of your quiz. And I'm going to pause recording. We're at break time if y'all want to take a break. This again. Okay, so start recording. So we're granting insert on eggs to farmer. That'll give Cletus rights to add data to the eggs table. And we're using farmer instead of Cletus because that's what you do. You add the permissions to the roles, not to the user accounts. Cletus is a developer user identifier we're using for this database for testing purposes. Farmer is the actual role. So if we were to ship this product out to somebody, we would clear out the Cletus, but leave farmer in place. So I'll execute that. And we also need to grant the ability to view the breeds table. So grant select on and again using farmer because that's our role. So you'll have to write a statement really similar to this on the quiz on Monday. It may not necessarily be select. It may be multiple, like select and insert, or maybe select and update. But you'll have to do something really similar to that. Okay, I'm going to test it out. I want to see if Cletus now has the rights to enter values into the eggs table. So I've switched over to my tab that Cletus is logged into. We'll execute, and query was successful this time without failing. I'll see if I can select the eggs. And what happened? So I got an error. Permission was denied. So what exactly happened? What went wrong? What went wrong over here? Bethany, what went wrong?
Did it overwrite the other? Right?
Yes. Yeah, so prior to adding the insert to the eggs table, we were able to view the eggs table, but since we just granted insert on eggs, what went wrong was it overwrote the permissions because you only have like one set of permissions per like table per roll. So when we did grant insert, it just simply overwrote. To fix that problem, we can grant select and insert. So comma separating them out. If I re-execute that with both select and insert on eggs to farmer, and I jump back over to this other tab, I should be able to select and see the row of information that was entered. I should still be able to add information into the table. So all of these are now working correctly. I'm inserting and viewing the table. So if you have to add permissions to the table, you also have to include the existing permissions if you still want them, because it doesn't overwrite. So definitely look at those two examples because you will need to do something very similar to that on the quiz on Monday. So Cletus has been bad. He's putting in bogus data into the table. I want you to remove the insert ability. You'll also have to do something like this on the quiz on Monday, be able to write out. You'll have a question worded pretty similar to that on the quiz. There'd be two ways to do this, but we're wanting to use the revoke and not the grant to fix this problem. So have I given you enough time to figure it out? So revoking permissions is pretty similar to granting. We could have just granted select on eggs to farmer and it would have overwrote those permissions, but the question and the SQL standard we're wanting, can you use the revoke command correctly? So I want to revoke insert on eggs from farmer. So the grant and revoke commands are fairly similar to each other. Your main differences, I pointed out in the PowerPoint, is the to and the from, and then the word revoke or grant. The rest of the structure is pretty much the same. So if I revoke insert on eggs from farmer, I should be able to go over here. I should still be able to query. But if I try to put in other data, I'll get the permission denied. So make sure you take good notes on that part right there for Monday's quiz. Okay, so I'm gonna have a little project for you to do. Okay, so I'm going to put recording and so for creating the role, you should have come up with something pretty similar to that as the answer. So farmer was already in there. We just had to grant the correct permissions to the correct tables. We did have to create the new role for the hired hand, create role, role name, no login, and not grand. It's nice to have colors. Why am I trying to put Grant again? T.
If you wanted to, could you put all the breeds, feed, flock, eggs, and feeding into one command line?
Not on most. Each one would typically need to be a separate line
Okay.
table. I don't know of a vendor that would allow you to comma separate out tables that way. They allow the comma separation of the permissions, but the tables.
Okay.
Not typically anyway, so I'll go ahead and see if this will execute without errors. And that's always the big test. And everything executed successfully with no errors. And again, just to remind you that next week we're liable to be remote all week long. So you may want to download all of your SQL code for creating, you may want to recreate the database on your local computer. I don't know how many is remoted in trying to work on it, but I know that can be kind of slow. How's the text coming across? I know sometimes when I shared in my Tuesday, Thursday class, I've seen the Zoom and it's kind of fuzzy for some reason. How's my share screen coming across?
It's fine for me.
It looks good to me.
Okay, so nobody's seen any fuzziness or anything? That's weird. I wonder if it's just something with the computers in 106. Oh, we did get new computers for 106. They are on campus. So they'll be bringing those in, and I was thinking about having my LAN class start to install them, slowly replacing them out, transferring data across. That's something else you'll want to make sure you probably copy all of your files if you've kept them on the local machine. Make sure you drag them up to OneDrive or something so that you can sync those down when we install the new machines in that room. Okay, so I'm going to do this as a Postgres. I'm going to open up a new editor here as Postgres. So create a view that links the breeds and flock table together. So yeah, create view and give it a name. can't think of anything other than create view, breeds, and flock. I don't see any other than breed ID. Column headings that would be duplicates of each other. So I'm not going to specify, I'm going to retain the column headings and just use as instead of using parentheses and specifying new column headings. And then I'll write my select statement. Actually, I'll probably write my select statement last. It's easier. And I don't know if you were able to look back on your notes on how to join the tables together. But I'm going to do from breeds B to abbreviate. I'm going to join the flock table F on a set of columns. They join on the breed ID. So B dot breed ID is equal to F dot breed ID. So that'll join the two tables together. Now the part I do not want to view, the primary foreign key columns. So I'm going to start with the flock information. So the flock table abbreviated with an F. So I'm going to have to put an F in all the columns I want to view onto the screen. So I don't want to view the chicken ID. I don't want to view the breed ID because chicken ID is primary key, breed ID is foreign key. So I'm going to hide those columns by specifying only the columns I want to see. So I got the date of birth, I got the hen, lost date, notes, and I'm just hitting enter because I've got my window small so I can read the instructions and the code at the same time. So I'm just tabbing over to make it look pretty for you, but it could have continued on that same line after notes. Now I need out of the breeds table, the breed name, egg color, yield, and egg size. Oh, that jumped around, so. So that would be creating a view and joining together. This will be more complicated than the question on Monday on your quiz. You will not have to join a table together. You will simply have to create a view and display a couple of columns from a table, so you won't have to worry with that part or abbreviating the column names. You'll just list the column names from the table name given to you in the question. You'll also have to create view as at the top. So if I execute this statement, the view is created successfully. I can verify it. Select star from the view name. You'll see you have date of birth, lost date, notes, name, egg color, yield, egg size. And this would be a very common example of why that you would want to create a view, because you'd likely want all of that information, but they're in separate base tables for normalization purposes.
Mr. Goodman, can you go to the previous tab so I can?
Yes,
Yes,
that one.
that one. Yes.
I added to the chat what I used to create the view. If you could look at that and see if that would be correct as well. I ran it on mine and it seemed to do exactly the same as what you did. So.
Yes, that looks pretty good. Let me see what this phone call is. Telemarketer call, as I thought. Okay, so create view chicken as you did the only thing you did was not you didn't abbreviate the tables and use the where statement to link them. That was how they showed in the book,
Right.
on how to do that. So yes, that works the same way. Should work the same way as before. Yep. If you don't put the where statement in there, there's I'll show you a Cartesian. When we get into the joining section, there's some interesting things you can end up with. You can end up with like millions of rows really quick if you join them in an interesting way. So so your way does work, but I will say most modern coding is probably using the join. I don't know what SQL standard where they added the join in. Probably SQL 92, maybe. That seems like where most databases try to implement everything in SQL standard 1992, at least. And then a subset of the SQL standard from anything past that point.
So yeah, the only difference is the one you abbreviated in the from join statement, and instead of where, it's the join on.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. Replace your where statement with the join and an on. Yes. It seems to read, or I think it's easier to see it this way because you got the keyword join, you know that's you're joining tables together, and then on, what columns are they joining on? I think it's just visually easier to glance at that and know that that's multiple tables combined together versus the other. You'd have to look a little bit harder at the code to see that you're joining stuff versus just a regular select statement and a where clause. Okay, well, we are at the end of class. So I will see y'all, I don't know, either in class on Monday or Zoom on Monday. This depends on road conditions, and keep an eye out for the email alerts. And like I said, if you've got code, if you're remote PC'd in, you might want to move all those files up to OneDrive and try to sync stuff down. Set this thing up on your computer at home. That way you don't have to be using a remote PC if you want to. But that's all I've got for today. Y'all got any more questions?
No, sir.
Okay, I will see y'all in the next class, some of you.